Welcome. This is just the beginning. We will lead this market. This is our vision.
I sat in the parking lot for 47 minutes. Just sat there. Rain hammering the roof of my car like it had a personal vendetta against me. The cardboard box on my passenger seat had a little succulent plant sitting on top. The one I'd kept on my desk for 3 years. And I kept staring at it like it was going to say something useful. It didn't. My name is Zara Cole, and 47 minutes ago, I had walked out of the Meridian Group's glass tower on Fifth Avenue, carrying everything I owned in that box, with my access badge already deactivated, and security watching me all the way to the elevator. 8 years. 8 years I had given to that company. Started as a junior event coordinator. Worked my way up to head of brand partnerships. I had built their entire hospitality portfolio from scratch. Every restaurant deal, every celebrity chef collaboration, every luxury launch event that put the Meridian Group on the map. That was me. My vision, my late nights, my relationships. And in one afternoon, with one meeting I wasn't invited to, it was gone. I want to tell you I cried. I want to tell you I called my mother or my best friend Danny and fell apart the way a person is supposed to when their world collapses. But I didn't. I just sat there watching the rain, thinking about how I had ironed Marcus's shirt that morning. My husband, Marcus Cole, was the kind of man who made every room feel like it was auditioning for him. Charming, beautiful, the kind of laugh that made strangers feel like old friends. We had been together for 6 years, married for 3. And for most of that time, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. I didn't notice the signs, or maybe I noticed and told myself a story that made more sense. I didn't notice that Jade Sinclair, the new VP of Acquisitions Marcus had personally recruited to the Meridian Group, started showing up at every dinner event I organized. I didn't notice that Marcus would go quiet whenever her name came up. In that specific way, men go quiet when they're protecting something. I didn't notice that 6 months ago, my biggest client, a hospitality group worth $12 million in annual revenue, quietly asked to be reassigned. I thought it was a routine reshuffling. It wasn't. What I found out later, what Danny pieced together from sources I don't want to name, was that Marcus had gone to the Meridian Group's CEO himself and suggested that my division was underperforming, that my client relationships were becoming a liability. He had spreadsheets. He had manufactured complaints. He had, in the most clinical and premeditated way possible, been quietly dismantling everything I had built for an entire year before I even knew what was happening. Why? Because Jade wanted my position, and Marcus wanted Jade. So my husband, the man who told me I was the most brilliant person he had ever met on our wedding day, decided that if my career was in the way of his affair, then my career had to go. They announced her promotion the same afternoon they walked me out. I found out from LinkedIn. Here is what nobody tells you about losing everything at once. It isn't loud. It isn't the dramatic, cinematic breakdown you imagine. It's very quiet. It's sitting in your own apartment, the apartment you're no longer sure you can afford, and realizing that every single person who said, "Let me know if you need anything," actually meant, "Let's not make this awkward." Marcus moved out within 2 weeks. He didn't fight about it. He was almost polite. That was somehow the worst part. I sent out 43 job applications in the first month. Heard back from 6. 2 led to interviews. Both went cold after the second round, which I later learned was because the Meridian Group, through channels I could never quite prove, was quietly poisoning the well. Performance concerns, cultural fit issues. The kind of language that can't be challenged because it can't be confirmed. By month 3, my savings were a countdown clock. By month 4, Danny sat across from me at her kitchen table and said, very gently, the words nobody wants to hear. Zara, you need to take something, anything, just to keep moving. And then came the night that broke me open completely. I was sitting alone in my apartment. Lights off, rain against the window again. The succulent still alive on my windowsill, because of course the plant survived when everything else died. When my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification, Jade Sinclair had just been promoted again. Executive Vice President, the role I had been building toward for 3 years. The title they had promised me was coming. They gave it to her, the woman who had taken my husband, taken my office, and apparently taken my entire future, with a press release that called her a visionary force in hospitality. I sat in the dark and I let myself feel it. All of it. The humiliation, the rage, the specific, bone-deep grief of watching someone else wear your life. And then I stopped crying. Not because I was done, because I had made a decision. So that's how Zara Cole, head of brand partnerships, architect of $12 million deals, woman who had once negotiated a contract over dinner with 3 Fortune 500 executives, ended up taking a waitressing shift at Hanok, the most exclusive Korean fine dining restaurant in the city. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself a lot of things that year. Hanok didn't feel like a restaurant. It felt like a secret. Dark wood panels, low lighting that made everyone look like they were in a film. A clientele that spoke in murmurs and never seemed to look at the menu because they already knew what they wanted. My manager, a meticulous Korean woman named Ms. Park, ran the floor like a military operation and had exactly 0 patience for anything less than perfection. I liked her immediately. 2 months in, I had figured out the rhythms. I knew which tables needed extra time, which regulars wanted their usual without being asked, which dishes were running slow from the kitchen. Old instincts die hard. I was still mapping systems, still building relationships, still doing the work. I just wasn't getting paid like it. Then he walked in, table 7, private corner booth, the kind of entrance that didn't announce itself, but somehow reorganized the entire room around it. Seo Jihan. I didn't know his name then. What I knew was this. He was tall in a way that felt deliberate. Dark suit, no tie. The kind of still that isn't calm, it's controlled. 2 men flanked him at a distance, not sitting, not speaking, just present in the way shadows are present. And he had eyes that swept the room exactly once, catalogued everything, and then settled. Miss Park appeared at my elbow so fast I startled. "Table 7 is yours tonight," she said, in a tone that meant something more than the words. "Understood," I said, even though I didn't. I walked over with the composure I had been practicing since the day my access badge stopped working. "Good evening. Welcome to Hanok. Can I start you with, 'You're new'?" Not a question, not rude, just stated, the way someone states a fact they find interesting. 2 months, I said. He looked at me for a moment. Not the way men usually look at women, cataloguing and deciding. More like he was reading something. You don't carry yourself like a waitress. I smiled the smile I had been perfecting. I'll take that as a compliment. Something shifted at the corner of his mouth, almost a smile. Not quite. You should, he said. I took his order. I brought his food. I did not think about him for the rest of the night. That was a lie. He came back the following Thursday, and the Thursday after that. Always table 7. Always the same 2 men at a distance. Always my section, which I started to suspect was not a coincidence. On the 4th visit, he ordered tea at the end of the meal, and then said, without looking up, "I know who you are, Zara Cole." I went very still. "I used to be in hospitality," I said carefully. "You built the Meridian Group's entire brand partnership division," he said. 12 million in managed revenue. 4 major restaurant concepts launched under your creative direction. Until your husband decided his mistress needed your office. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had heard in months. "I'm going to need a moment," I said. "Take 2, he said. I stood there. Then I put my notepad down on the edge of his table, crossed my arms, and looked at him directly. "What exactly is this conversation?" He finally looked up. "I have 14 restaurant properties across 6 cities. A hospitality group inside a larger organization. I've been without a director of brand operations for 8 months because I have not found anyone who meets my standard. And you meet my standard?" I laughed. I couldn't help it. "You're recruiting me while I'm waitressing at your restaurant. It's efficient," he said. I picked up my notepad. "Mr. Seo Jihan, Mr. Seo, with respect, I don't know anything about you, except that you tip well and you ask for your tea at exactly 47 minutes into every meal." This time, the smile was real, barely, but real. "You noticed." "I notice everything," I said. "It's a problem." He reached into his jacket and slid a black card across the table. "No name, just a number." "Think about it," he said. "I don't just offer jobs, Miss Cole." I looked at the card, looked at him, picked it up. I told myself I was just going to think about it. I did my research. Seo Jihan, 36, CEO of SJ Holdings, a private investment conglomerate with reach in real estate, logistics, and hospitality across Asia and North America. Almost no press, no social media. The kind of wealth that doesn't need visibility because it doesn't need validation. There were other things people said about him. Quieter things. That SJ Holdings was connected to old money in Seoul that moved through channels governments didn't always know about. That Seo Ji-hoon had inherited more than a business empire. That the men who flanked him weren't just bodyguards. They were soldiers. Korean Mafia. That was the word that came up in the forums and gossip threads I shouldn't have been reading at 2 in the morning. I called Danny. "He offered you a job," she said. "Yes." "A powerful, mysterious, extremely attractive Korean man who owns restaurants offered you your dream job back." "That is not Danny. Zara, your ex-husband destroyed your career for a woman who wasn't even better than you. She was just more convenient. And now the universe is offering you a correction. Take the job. He might be in the Mafia." Silence. "Still take the job," she said. I met with him 3 days later. Not at the restaurant. At the SJ Holdings offices on the 42nd floor of a building that made the Meridian Group look like a branch location. He laid out the scope plainly. 14 properties, a rebrand initiative that had stalled because nobody had the vision to lead it. A budget that made me grip the edge of my chair to keep from reacting. I had questions. Many of them. I asked every single one. He answered without impatience. And somewhere around the 90-minute mark, I realized that this man had done his homework on me the way I had done it on him, maybe more thoroughly. He knew my methodology. He knew which of the Meridian Group's concepts had been my idea versus inherited ones. He knew what I would have done differently if I'd had full authority. "How do you know all of this?" I asked. "I pay attention to people who are underestimated," he said. "It's good business." I thought about Marcus, about Jade, about 43 job applications and 6 callbacks. "If I take this," I said slowly, "I need full creative authority on the rebrand. No interference, no one overriding decisions without going through me first." "Agreed. And I need to understand the boundaries of what SJ Holdings is and isn't involved in. Because I will not put my name on anything I can't stand behind." He was quiet for a moment, studying me. "You're not afraid of me," he said. "I've been more afraid of my own husband," I said. And he didn't have the decency to be honest about who he was. Something moved behind his eyes. "I will always be honest with you, Zara." I believed him, which surprised me more than anything else about that day. "Then we have a deal," I said. "What they don't show you in the movies is that rebuilding isn't triumphant. Not at first. It's exhausting. It's going through 15 iterations of a brand concept before 6 in the morning. It's getting on a plane to Seoul to negotiate with a restaurant group that has never taken an American woman seriously, and making them take you seriously before the appetizers arrive. It's learning the culture of a new empire, fast enough to lead within it. Seo Jihan was demanding in the way brilliant people are demanding. Not cruel, not capricious, but relentlessly precise. He noticed everything. He remembered everything. And he held the work to a standard that made you hold yourself to the same one. But here's what I also noticed. He noticed when I hadn't eaten. A meal would appear at my desk at 7 p.m. without explanation. He noticed when the construction noise from the property renovation next door was disrupting my calls and had the schedule adjusted. He noticed, though he would never say so, when I was fighting something internally and he would simply make space without making it an event. He was watching out for me. I told myself it was how he managed all his people. Efficient, strategic, keep your assets functioning at peak capacity. I told myself that right up until the night Marcus showed up. I should have seen it coming. Marcus had heard through the industry grapevine that I was back, that I was leading a hospitality rebrand that was generating buzz, that my name was showing up in trade press again, and this time attached to something bigger than the Meridian Group. He couldn't let that stand. He showed up at the restaurant launch, our first major rebranding reveal. A property in Midtown I had spent 4 months rebuilding, from concept to execution. The event was perfect. It was everything. And then I saw him across the room with a glass of champagne and a smile like he'd been invited. "Zara," he said, like we were old friends. "Look at you, landing on your feet." "Marcus," I kept my voice level, "you need to leave." "I just came to see the work." He tilted his head. "You know, some people are saying you've gotten involved with some complicated people. That might make it hard to get your reputation fully restored. In case you were wondering why those industry board applications keep going quiet." And there it was. He was still doing it, still pulling threads behind the curtain, still trying to make sure every door I opened had his fingerprints on the lock. I don't know what I would have said. I don't know how that conversation would have ended, because Seo Ji-han materialized at my side before I could find out. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't touch Marcus. He simply stood there. And there is no other way to describe it. Like weather. Like something atmospheric that you could not negotiate with or appeal to. "You're in the wrong building," Seo Ji-han said. Marcus looked at him, looked at me, and whatever he saw in both of us made the champagne glass lower very slowly. "We were just talking," Marcus said. "You were done talking," Seo Ji-han said. "Mr. Cole, what happened to your wife's career at the Meridian Group? I have documentation, detailed documentation, that could reach a great number of people, or it could stay where it is." A pause that lasted exactly the right amount of time. "That depends entirely on whether you are ever in her vicinity again." Marcus left. He didn't say goodbye. I stood very still and watched him go. Then I turned to Seo Ji-han. "You've had documentation this whole time," I said. "Yes." "Why didn't you use it when you first offered me the job?" He looked at me. "Because you didn't need rescuing. You needed an opportunity. There's a difference." I didn't say anything for a long moment. "Thank you," I finally said. "Don't thank me," he said. "The launch was exceptional. That's yours, not mine." He drove me home that night, not in a car service, himself, which I didn't expect. The city moved past the windows, and neither of us said anything for a while, which was somehow the most comfortable silence I had been in for over a year. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Yes." "Why me? Really? You had your pick of anyone for this position. You could have gone to an executive search firm and had 10 candidates in a week. Why did you sit in my section 4 Thursdays in a row?" He kept his eyes on the road. "Because I watched you for 2 months," he said, "before I ever spoke to you. I watched how you handled a difficult table without losing your composure, how you memorized every regular's preference within 2 weeks, how Ms. Park, who does not respect easily, started asking your opinion on floor logistics. A beat. I watched someone operate at 10% of their actual capacity and still outperform everyone around them. I looked out the window. That made you angry, I said. Not a question. It made me certain, he said. I turned back to him. Certain of what? He glanced over, and for the first time since I had met Seo Ji-han, something in his expression was not measured or controlled. It was just honest. That whoever had convinced you that you were small was lying, he said, and I wanted to be the person who showed you the actual size of what you're capable of. The city kept moving. My heart did something inconvenient. Ji-han, I said. First time I'd used his first name. Zara, he said. I think this stopped being just a business arrangement a while ago. He pulled up to my building, put the car in park, turned to look at me fully. It stopped being a business arrangement, he said quietly, the night you put your notepad down on my table and looked at me like I was going to have to earn your attention. 18 months after I walked out of the Meridian Group with a succulent and a cardboard box. I walked into their boardroom in a different coat. I want to describe the coat. It matters. Black cashmere, floor length, cut like authority. The kind of thing that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. I had been here 100 times, known every corner, every creak of the conference room chairs, every view from these windows. I had bled in these walls, quietly, invisibly, the way women do when they are building someone else's dream and calling it their own. SJ Holdings had been watching the Meridian Group for 6 months. Their hospitality portfolio had begun to deteriorate. 3 flagship partnerships dissolved, 2 concept restaurants shuttered, after their new VP made a series of decisions that looked bold on paper and collapsed in practice. The board was looking for a lifeline. They found one. They just didn't know yet what it looked like. I was the last to arrive. Seo Jihan was already seated at the head of the table, calm, still, wearing that particular silence he carries like a second suit. His team flanked him on one side. The Meridian Group's board occupied the other. And at the far end of the table, seated next to their CEO, were Marcus and Jade. Jade saw me first. I watched it happen. The recognition, the confusion, the recalculation. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She glanced at Marcus. Marcus went the color of old paper. Nobody spoke. Seo Jihan stood. I appreciate everyone's time. As discussed, SJ Holdings is prepared to move forward with the acquisition of Meridian Group's hospitality division under specific terms. He paused. I'll turn the strategic overview over to our Director of Brand Operations, who will be leading the integration and transition. He looked at me, not with performance, not with theatre, just looked at me the way he always did, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I stood. I set my portfolio on the table, and I looked calmly, completely, without cruelty and without flinching, at the 2 people who had decided my career was something they could discard. Good morning, I said. For those of you I haven't worked with before, my name is Zara Cole. I'll be overseeing the restructuring of this division. Jade's jaw tightened. Marcus wouldn't look at me. As part of the integration terms, I continued, we'll be conducting a full leadership review. All existing VP and C-suite positions within the hospitality division will need to be reapplied for under the new structure. I let that land the way it needed to. Reapplied for and evaluated. The Meridian Group's CEO shifted in his chair. Ms. Cole, I'm sure we can discuss. The terms are non-negotiable, Seo Jihan said, without looking up from his notes. End of discussion. Jade pushed back her chair and stood. You think sitting beside him makes you powerful? Her voice was controlled but barely. The whole room heard it. I looked at her for exactly 1 second. No, I said. Building what he trusts me to lead does. Silence. Not the uncomfortable kind. The kind that follows a verdict. In her eyes, I saw what she had never said out loud, but had always believed, that she had won. That she had gotten everything. The title, the office, the husband, the future. She looked at me now in this room, in this coat, in this position. And she understood she had been wrong about all of it. The review process, I said, turning back to the room, begins next week. You'll receive details by end of day. She sat back down. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I did not need to. I just turned the page of my portfolio and kept going. Because this wasn't about them anymore. It never was. He caught me after the meeting. Of course he did. Zara. I stopped, turned. He looked older somehow, like the version of Marcus I had married had slowly been replaced by something more tired, less certain. I didn't think, he started. No, I said. You didn't. What I did to you was calculated, deliberate, and specific, I said. Not angry, just accurate. You didn't make a mistake, Marcus. You made a choice. For a year, you made it every single day. He had the decency to not argue. "I'm not here for an apology," I said. "And I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because I'm good at what I do. That's the only reason." I looked at him, this man I had loved, this man who had ironed his own shirt the morning he helped orchestrate my firing. And I felt something release. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but freedom. The specific freedom of someone who no longer needs anything from a person to feel whole. "Good luck with the review," I said, and I walked away. He called my name once more. I didn't turn around. Here is what I know now, standing on the other side of it all. The leadership review resulted in the elimination of 11 positions in the Meridian Group's hospitality division, including both Marcus and Jade's roles. The documentation Seo Jihan had held, and ultimately submitted to the relevant industry bodies as part of the acquisition audit, was thorough. Manufactured performance complaints, falsified client reassignments, a coordinated campaign to damage a former employee's reputation. It left a paper trail precise enough to matter. They were not just let go, they were investigated. I heard about it from Danny on a Tuesday morning, while I was reviewing expansion plans for our new Seoul property and eating the breakfast that had appeared on my desk without explanation, exactly when I needed it. I did not feel what I expected to feel. Mostly, I felt free. The SJ Holdings Hospitality Division launched its rebranded portfolio to the kind of reception that ends up in Forbes features and industry panels. My name was on it. Fully, completely, without asterisk or disclaimer. Not as a supporting credit, as the architect, as for Seo Jihan. He is not a simple man. He never pretended to be. There are still things about his world I am learning, edges and histories that are not always clean. But he told me the truth. From the very first real conversation we had, he told me the truth. And in a season of my life built entirely on lies, that was worth more than anything. The night the acquisition closed, he found me on the rooftop of the Seoul property, our newest, tallest, most expensive. The city spread below us like something we had built ourselves. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me. Then, "How does it feel?" I thought about the box, the succulent, the rain, the 47 minutes in a parking lot, when I didn't know if I would ever feel like myself again. "Like it was always supposed to be mine," I said. "I just needed someone to stop standing in the way." He turned, and this time there was no control in his expression, no careful restraint, just him, looking at me the way he had been looking at me since a Thursday night at table 7. "Stay," he said, quiet, certain, like he had thought about it for a long time. One word, no theatre, no performance. I turned to look at him, this man who had handed me a foundation when the ground was gone, who had never once asked me to be smaller than I was. And I felt something settle in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. "I already am," I said. He asked me once, early on, what I had been most afraid of when I took the job. I told him that I'd trade one person using me for another. He nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now I understand the difference," I said, "between someone who offers you a lifeline and someone who offers you a foundation." He had given me foundation, everything built on top of it. That part was mine. My name is Zara Cole. I didn't just survive what they did to me. I walked back into their house, and I decided who stayed. If this story moved you, if you've ever had someone try to make you small so they could feel bigger, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you want to know what happens next with Zara and Jihan, you already know where to find me.